Uh,
So we go.
Here we are. This
Indeed.
is Going Solo Media, WGSN-DB network, radio, TV, and podcast #1 internet singles talk network. And this is Let's Talk About Dating with Barry and Christine. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine.
And sometimes I put me first, sometimes I put you first. I keep you guessing. You never know, right?
Ooh.
Isn't that another thing about men and women? Boy, we do keep you guessing.
Many
And then when
ways.
you guess, you're often going to guess wrong, huh?
Well, that's a whole other topic about understanding each other, but let's save it for another time. That's not the topic today.
So today we're talking about, when is your relationship done? How would
Yeah.
you know?
What
When
is
is it?
your age?
When is your relation? Is this relationship over? So I looked at the title a bunch of times and then I messed it up anyway. Because sometimes you know right away when you first meet somebody, and sometimes you've known them for a little while, and then sometimes you've been ignoring things, maybe, or things have popped up, maybe. So I think it'd be really fun to unpack all of that because
Yes. Yeah.
people can jump too quickly. We can certainly talk about that too.
Well, considering this is only 3 days after Valentine's Day, that's definitely a cushion. You met someone on Valentine's Day, now you're breaking up already. Is it over that quickly?
Probably not meant to be.
Probably. Yes, we dive into this. And I know I've already got several stories I can share from my own experience of like the, let's just say, the reasons they were over weren't the right reasons, but there were benefits in the back end. So we'll talk about also, what can happen as well, because there are pluses and minuses in the whole thing. But calling it over when it isn't necessarily over. There are so many people, and I was one of them, that are sort of almost gun shy, where you're too scared to commit fully in. So it's almost any excuse to get out is the time to leave. So the question is the relationship really over, or are you just scared of being in the relationship? So that we'll talk about as well.
Well, and yeah, we've talked about how we've both done that, and we've had clients that have done that. Well, I'm just going to break up with them before they have a chance to break up with me.
Yeah, I'll get out of the way first.
So in control and empowered.
Really?
I know.
It's like,
That's the reasons they give me. Because that's often so 100% our stuff and doesn't very often have much anything else to do with the other person.
yeah.
If you're not admitting, you're just afraid. You're afraid, can you maintain it? You're afraid they'll hurt you. You're afraid that they'll figure out something about you that they don't know yet. And so you'd rather just leave than have all that happen. Where staying, no matter how long or how short, as you said right off, gives us a great place to learn and hone our skills and build a foundation for what we could do even better the next time.
Absolutely. In fact, that's the thing, is second guessing ourselves can be so challenging too. So, if you're looking back at your past relationships, actually, as we're talking here, and you're thinking that maybe you regret something you made in the past, you can't really go back and clean those things up. So the question is going to be, as we'll get to in this conversation, definitely, because I've got a lot to share about my own experience. What lessons can you learn that you take forward so you don't maybe do the same thing going forward? Because if you were scared before, what was the reason for being scared? Or if you were finding it like you already clear it was wrong, but you were going to stick it out longer than you maybe should have done when you should have left earlier, there's both sides of this conversation, leaving too early, leaving, in quotes, too late, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that over piece, the relationship over, what really constitutes it being over for you? So my question to the viewer, if you're watching us, which I presume you are, if otherwise I'm talking this empty space.
We just like talking to each other.
Yes, we are. At least we have that conversation. That's great. It is, if you want to look back at your most recent relationship or any relationship and look at what was the decision point to say this is over, and looking back in hindsight, is it still true for you? So there's some questions to throw in there. So let's leave this question
very honest about it. Be 100% honest, especially hindsight. They do say how hindsight can be 20/20, that you really do have an opportunity to be way more honest when you're in the throes of all the emotion. It is hard to be honest and open about, well, how am I really feeling, and did I really learn anything from this if I'm in the middle of having a broken heart? And then later, if you can say, what did I learn from this? It's really beneficial. And I went out on a limb and I wrote, it's going to be a little different than this, but I'm going to say that I wrote a newsletter about what could be a benefit to losing my husband. And I knew I would get lots of pushback because there's no benefits, there can't be any benefits. And I said, but I can't bring him back. So, and I'm that kind of person that I'm always looking for, what could I get out of every experience I've had in my life? And so the thing I said in the article was, I'd been a coach while he was alive, but I had no idea how to coach a widowed person because I'd only been a divorced person. Yeah. And now I could actually coach widowed people, which they have come in droves because they know I get it. So even that, this horrible tragedy in my life, and I'm not Pollyanna about it all. I know all the crappy parts for sure. And I also can honestly say, here was a benefit to me and to my clients. So that's what you get in hindsight, because that took me a long time to get there for sure.
Yeah, that's a big one, definitely a big one. Yeah. I mean, the other part also is you start to look back, and I've taught this a lot with my own work because I learned these lessons in two major instances in my life. How when I started joining the dots and noticed the common threads of relationships that I ended up getting from or was kicked out of, depending on who was someone that broke up, yeah. Both, what the common threads are. Because that's a telltale sign, right? A clear indicator pointing to unresolved issues that I was carrying around. So I suggest anybody watching the same thing is true. It's like if you look back at your past relationships and maybe 2 or 3 of them that happened quickly, it could have been a couple of them over a long period of time. But what was the common threads? Because they will tend to tell you things you may not realize about yourself. It could be good news or bad news, or better yet, good news or educational news.
Educational, I like that, because it's neither good or bad. I mean, it's really a very benign thing.
It's what happened.
Can be beneficial, but it's very benign to have something go, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. Wow, that's interesting, because you and I've certainly talked about our personal experiences of what we've learned over our own patterns in dating. And to say, I love this term of what's their 100% and what's your 100%. About why relationships succeed, because it takes 2 people, and why it doesn't succeed. It still takes 2 people.
Yes.
And what do you get to learn about you?
Absolutely. I mean, so that is really the key, because ultimately when you're out of the relationship, it's over and it's done. You're the only one left in the conversation anyway.
Yep.
So the question then becomes like, well, if you don't choose to learn what happened and become aware of what you did get from it and what changed you, what did you benefit from, or what price did you pay, so you may end up repeating the same thing with the next person you're in the next person you're in a relationship with. I stopped too early in my statement.
It's like I filled it in my head, though. That was really funny.
I know, because I was going one way and I was like this way, and I'm like, oh, hang on, there's another piece of me in the back. It's the person you're in a relationship with going forward, because that's the other part, is that for me, and this is why I want to make sure people get this, is that, well, one, if you don't learn from what happened, don't learn your lessons from the past relationship, you end up repeating the next one. So you're going to go back in again, do the same again and again. So one thing is like, do you want to keep repeating the same pattern with a different person? The second thing is that ideally your relationships become a classroom. I'll say an education, but it's basically your relationship, especially ones that are over, if you really look at them as a place to learn from, you can change your trajectory going forward. So the next relationship could be a whole different experience if you really learn and embody and learn the lessons from the past relationships. You don't keep carrying the same baggage unconsciously forward to the next one. That's what I had to do. I mean, I did it with 2 different instances, which I'll share later on. That really changed the course of my life. And frankly, one of the lessons has changed my life and my work and why I do this work in the first place.
Yep. I've certainly had the same thing happen.
Yeah.
So I was thinking when I was pondering on this subject that might be really good to just do the real blatant reasons to end a relationship. So just start with that. And then I love that we're going to go into all the subtle things, because I think it's really important for people to go, oh yeah, I can't stay with that, and have it more consciously in front of their brains.
Yeah. Because we start talking also about red flags and green flags too, sort of thing, to know those reasons, the deal breakers that we may not have. mean, that's probably the easiest one to go with is what ends a relationship can be basically deal breakers you didn't either recognize or know you had until you were in the relationship.
Yes. Boy, that has been my experience too, yours as
Yeah,
well. Like, oh,
absolutely.
I didn't even know that could be a problem. I didn't know that would bring up something in me.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've had deal breakers definitely that are very clear that I won't go into a relationship if I see those are there. If they're a smoker, that's one thing that doesn't work. Or if they're polyamorous, that's not for me either. Those are very easy and clear. You see from the beginning. But once you get into a relationship with that person and discover something else that's going on that is a deal breaker for you, what do you do with that? Can you work with that? Maybe you want to walk away right now. And some of the things we're going to share, I know, are going to be questions that the viewers are going to be able to witness and consider for themselves if it's really something they can work with, or if they simply got to bail and say no. It's over.
And is there room for negotiation? I mean,
Right.
that's really what you have to say. If it's something that you cannot live with at all, no matter what, or is it something, well, if they did it this, like I had mentioned that I have this girlfriend that her husband quit smoking eventually, but when they first met, he was a smoker and she just liked so much about him. He would just smoke outside and then he'd brush his teeth and change his clothes and go through all these shenanigans so she wasn't exposed to the smoke. But he was still clinically a smoker. And I still couldn't believe that she was good. But she goes, I like all these. I mean, there's like 90%. And now they've been married for like 43 years. So that's one of the things where you think, can you negotiate this, even though it feels like a total deal breaker?
That is the thing. And I mean, I know one of the biggest ones that's come up many, many times is when it becomes like adultery, when one partner cheats on the other partner, can that be healed? Because really what comes down to, yes, there is the physical mixing of energies going on, if I'm going to get like very metaphysical about it, but also is the fact that trust was violated. Because trust is one of the biggest things in relationship that can be built and destroyed by words and by deeds so easily. And something that takes a long time to build the trust and takes 2 seconds to break it.
So fidelity is certainly can completely end a relationship. It doesn't have to. I've certainly coached a few couples that really wanted to work it out, really wanted to stay together. And then, I know a number of them, they just couldn't. It was too much of a betrayal, or they really couldn't feel that they could ever trust them, either their personal feeling or the other person's way of reassuring them. That one person couldn't let it go, the other person couldn't promise that they would never do it again. But if you can heal from it, the ones I know that have, they say out loud and have written to me that it's even stronger now.
Yeah.
Because they went through this hard night of the soul.
Well, I think what's also added to that is that oftentimes the trust isn't visible until it's been broken. Yes. It's almost like when you get together with somebody, there's no like, okay, we're trusting each other, we're building trust. It's assumed. And then when the trust gets violated by somebody cheating or some other reason, then it becomes a choice point. Like, can we build that trust back in? And if we're doing it, then it becomes a conscious choice. So it becomes much more visible to them. So in fact, the trust can be stronger than it was before because the trust was assumed, not practiced. Now it's practiced intentionally. So yes, there is a way back, but that does require a lot of work on both partners and both people to really get clear that the relationship is a priority for them to do that.
So the other thing that I think can absolutely be a deal breaker and has the possibility of negotiation is substance abuse. Alcohol, drugs, marijuana. Do you not notice ahead of time? Is this really something that did arrive later? Is it something that it was tolerable and now it's gotten worse? I mean, to really look at the reality of where the person that's having the substance abuse is in their life. Where is it on the scale? And where is it on your scale?
That's a big one because I mean, I have a few friends who marijuana. I mean, in California, so marijuana is kind of common in a sense. I mean, I smell it everywhere, which is kind of strange.
Well, you live in that area for sure.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's I like a glass of wine once a week, give or take. So it's not an addiction, but it's like I love a glass of wine once a while with a meal. I don't just drink it with that on its own. It's like with a meal because I I use it as a aid to digestion is my excuse.
I
Well,
like that one.
glass of red wine's good for digestion, as far as I know.
And
But
sleeping, I've heard it's good for sleeping too. So there you go. Good
well,
health
well,
reason.
that's the reason why I don't drink white wine, because white wine puts me to sleep instantly. It's like it's a guaranteed.
That's funny.
When I lived in Germany, I got into white wines, and the German wine was very sweet, and I have a sweet tooth, so I love the white wines. But boy, 2 glasses, and I'll be like. So I drink red wine now. And I've actually grown to like the flavor of red wine. But the thing is, so I like a glass of red wine, once a week, give or take. I don't go through more like than 2 glasses a week. Maybe I don't go one every night for sure. But there are definitely people who have a like consistent alcohol or consistent intake that's going on. And for me, and it's funny because a neighbor down the street, the daughter's boyfriend smokes marijuana, but in his car outside the house. Like that's their rule, like outside the house.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that smell, it just expands.
Oh.
It's like when I go bike riding, I go for a walk down the street, I go past it. It's like even though I can't see it, I can smell I'm walking through a cloud of it, And the problem is the current, not breeds, wrong word. The current blends they have a really funky smell that I just, I'm sure pot didn't smell like this, 10 years ago. I don't know, it's just changed. Anyway, so for me, those things become definitely deal breakers. I understand people like to have marijuana in certain ways. And of course, if you're doing edibles, there's a different story because the smell isn't there. So it's okay, you can work with that. But the smoking of marijuana, and I used to smoke cigarettes when I was a kid, in my teens. But I did quit twice before I quit cold turkey in my early 20s and never quit it since. So never smoked since. So cigarettes became, for me, I gave it cigarettes because I didn't like the smell on my clothes. It wasn't about somebody else smoking. It's just I didn't like being around myself when I was smoking. So that's why I gave it up. So those sort of deal breakers, it's good to know what they are because, yes, you might ignore the symptoms early on. But it's kind of like, this thing about trust, you presume that's what's going to be the same status from that point forward. But as you go into 5-10 years of relationship, does the amount of consumption increase that you didn't catch on? Do you make an agreement up front about that or not? So if you didn't, then there's no real containment or agreement in place. So your trust is not necessarily your trust may be violated, but you didn't have trust in the first place. You just assumed it.
Yeah.
So you actually use your assumption has been violated, not your trust.
Yes.
So that becomes another story too. So
for sure.
That's why it's important.
And one of the discussions to go with your point to have with somebody that you're getting to know is, well, how do you handle stressful situations? What do you do under stress? Because if there is something they use on a regular basis, like smoking or alcohol or even recreational drugs like marijuana, what happens when they get stressed? Do they quadruple? Do they change? Because it can change your personality. You can now become a different person than this person you thought you were with. So being proactive about this is what I do when I'm under stress. And what do you do when you're under stress? What has been your pattern in the past? And how has that affected, good or bad, your past relationships?
Yeah.
Because I want to know. And I want to tell them about me. Since I've talked more than once about how crabby I'm this happy person, but I can be really crabby if I get too hungry or too tired. So I know this about me, and I will put up a warning label of I didn't get enough sleep last night, or I need to go have lunch. So which is so different than drugs and alcohol, but it's the same sort of thing that what happens, what is your escalation and what do you do when you escalate and how do you think you calm yourself down? I'll go eat a sandwich or take a nap. But, somebody who needs to have 5 drinks at the end of the day, if it was a really stressful day, that would be hard for me. I would have trouble with that. Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing is that's what I think I'm come back to the same point is it's important to know what your trust with the other person is and to have sense of agreements that you have in place that you then maintain, because that creates a structure that is sacred and a structure that builds trust. And so then you'll know when the trust gets violated, whether or not that becomes the deal breaker or not, becomes the red flag where you say, this relationship is over.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So another way is, and boy, it's what I found in my first marriage. I said, I am unhappy more than I'm happy in my marriage.
That's a clue.
Because you're going to be unhappy now and then. It's just part of being a human being. And sometimes it's just because I was in a crabby mood because I hadn't had enough to eat or sleep. Or sometimes it really was something that was being caused in our relationship. And you get through that. That does tend to make you stronger if you really can get through it. And when it's now more negative, more dread, you stop liking who you are when you're with them. You stop liking them.
Yeah.
I think that's just a really huge clue.
It's, boy, there's so much stuff that we ignore about ourselves when we're in a relationship, which is interesting. That's not for another time. Maybe we'll see if we make it through this one. But it's the recognition oftentimes, because for some people, this relationship is over when enough crap has accumulated to say it's over now.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's over when one big thing happens that goes, okay, now it's over.
Good point.
So there are different variations of what that when your tolerance has been exceeded, so to speak.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
Right. And Spencer, I'll share one story from my own experience. And I've shared this before, and I know in our shows before about patterns. And both of these come up in patterns as well. But the one I'll talk about first is that when I was younger, my relationships would end very abruptly. So it wasn't a cumulative thing. It was like, it gets over. Because I had this wiring about that I didn't know I had at the time. Looking back in hindsight, 2020 hindsight, so much clearer. But at the time, and this is going back, this is definitely probably age 19 to about 23, maybe 25. So it's over a period of about 6-7 years when I was in my early 20s, very naive and very, very new at dating and relationship at that point. But every single time I get into a relationship, and it wouldn't last that long, frankly, maybe 3 months at most, I would leave because we'd have an argument.
Just one? Wow.
Just the one argument. Because I had this rule inside, and I knew, and looking back, I know it came from my family, not intentionally, but I took it on that way, is that every relationship that I was in that period, especially that period of time, till I figured out what I was doing wrong, or I should say what I was missing, let's be accurate, was that when we had an argument, I had a belief in my system that an argument meant there was no love, because love didn't have arguments. That was the rule inside of me, because I was raised with that in my family. My parents didn't argue in front of the kids that I'm aware of. And so arguments weren't part of the picture. In fact, there was one argument happening in my family dynamics when my dad did something stupid at work that could have got him fired, and my mother was very upset about it. And I felt the shockwave in the family that the family was going to break up, and it almost did. Didn't. We got past it. That was a massive, elevation of trust. But I saw the threat to the family, so I was like, I'm never going to have that in my life. Like, if I'm in a relationship, no arguments, because I'm scared of that. So, of course, when we had an argument, usually I would be the culprit, but not the one that started the argument. She would get upset with me about something. Very smart that way, so I could be blameless. I was really smart in a bad way at that time. Mm-hmm. But so it's basically I'd quit the relationship. So it's like, if there was an argument, there was no love. That was the black and white rule in my life. So I ended up losing out. And so I joke about the fact I didn't know about makeup sex because we didn't get that far.
Yeah, because that could be pretty hot.
Right. But the thing is, so I had this rule, and that was the thing is that, and this is one sidebar, is that definitely looking back at past relationships, if you are wise enough to see the repeat cycles, the patterns that happen again and again and again, because I saw that myself looking back at my relationships, and then look back at your childhood and see if there's anything that overlaps in commonality. I saw that my upbringing created that framework that love was independent of arguments, and so they didn't go together. And so I saw that, and this one had transformed for me. So definitely for some of us, our relationship deal breakers may not really be that accurate, because that one wasn't accurate ultimately. I mean, it worked. I mean, it was what I used because I was raised with that. But looking back, I'm like, damn, I gave up too easily because I didn't realize that wasn't a real deal breaker. Mm-hmm. So it's important to know what is really the over and what is just a hiccup.
Mm-hmm. A growth opportunity, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Now that we're mature adults, we can call it that. So there's another thing. I wasn't
mature at that time.
No. Well, nobody was. Nobody. No.
Rarely.
So there's another piece of, if you fight, argue, disagree a lot of the time. Now, I will tell you, I've known too in my lifetime that there was that thing, the Bickersons, these people, they just bickered and it worked for them. It would drive me crazy even be around them because I don't like it. It's my family did that a lot, my family of origin, and I was like, I am so not going to live that way. I'm fine with disagreements and I'm fine with even getting mad at each other, but the ongoing little I can't do that. I just can't. And so that to me, except for these two couples that thrived on it, seems to be a symptom for me that if I start feeling picky and I feel like they're just being picky and we're just getting on each other's last nerve all the time and we're not able to work it out and talk it through, that is not a good relationship for me, for sure. It doesn't feel healthy.
See, I would suspect for those two couples you talked about, because again, I'm very much, I trust this implicit learning that we get from our childhood. I strongly suspect that both those couples have a wiring inside that bickering meant they loved each other.
Oh, you're so right. It's how they kept in touch. It's how they kept in contact. It was wild.
Yeah.
It was fascinating to watch in short bits because it's a hard thing that's kind of hard on me.
Right. It doesn't fit for you. So yeah.
You're so right. There was never any like huge blow up and there was never any, I've had it. I never heard any of that. There was just all this picking. It was wild. And I said, well, maybe they were just keeping the pressure down. You know, they kept letting off steam all the time for them.
It's like a simmer, not a boil.
Yeah. But I think you're really right. When I really think about it, because I was so young when I watched these two people, they were friends of my parents. And I'd go, who wants to live that way? It's so bizarre. Then he got off on it. And they were married till one of them died. I mean, really, seemingly, I really do have to go out on a limb and say seemingly happy. Pretty wild.
Happy in the bickering, you know?
Yeah, not me.
No.
So if your world is not about showing that you care and you feel cared about if somebody picks on you and bickers at you, I think ongoing disagreements, challenging, you have to just be right. There's no negotiation. There's not a very much give and take. I would think that could certainly be grounds for getting out of that relationship. Doesn't seem fun to me.
Well, the thing is also, one of the other pieces is when you discover the person you're with isn't who you thought they were. Yes. I have that experience too.
What happened, Barry?
Well, this is actually the last 3 relationships I was in before I started doing this work big time. This is back in the early 2000s. Well, 2.5 relationships because one was very short. But the 3 relationships, I would say, let's use the last one of the 3 because that's the most explicit model I have. And I'm so grateful to every single one of them. One of them I'm still dear friends with. But at the time, what they had in relationship, what drew me to them, what drew them to me, that's the right way around, was that I was very much in leadership roles around places that they were hanging out. And so they looked at me as being very much in charge and running the show. But I wasn't actually being a leader in my life. I was being a leader in those environments. So when I wasn't on duty, I switched gears. I'm breaking it down simply. So in the last relationship, she asked me out. I mean, that's how clear it was, which was very flattering. I was like, wow, that's cool. And she basically ran the relationship until she got fed up that I didn't take charge. Because she had assumed, I believe, my perception, that when she saw me in leadership roles where she was attracted to me, because I was running volunteer teams, both places that we were hanging out. And so I had a lot of respect around people until I didn't. That's not one of the conversation. But I was running these volunteer teams. And so she was really enamored by that. And she liked that. And she came out to me and she flattered me and she flirted with me and she asked me out. And I thought nothing of it, thinking that's cool. Sure. And we got together and the sex was great too. We had a great passionate relationship until she got sick and tired of me not being passive, because I was passive in the relationship. I wasn't the leader that I was in stage, so to speak, when I came off stage, when I came off that role. I was just like enjoying life. I've been the nice guy. I mean, it's a whole story out from my teens until that point in my life. where I had only two ways of being as a man, and I was going to be the nice guy, or I had to be macho, and I hated being macho, so I was with the nice guy. She wanted me to be macho, and I couldn't be that. It wasn't in my DNA, so to speak. It wasn't my. I knew that I would hurt too many people if I did that. So I was the nice guy, which sucked, frankly, because at that time I didn't know the third piece of that puzzle, which is the masculinity, which I've lived in for the last 15 years.
Yep.
But it was because of that breakup that put me into this work. So even though I've not seen her, find her on social media or anything since we had that breakup, when she kicked me out, she was basically in my face telling me, you know, I didn't step up. I wasn't the man she thought I was. I was, she didn't call me two-faced, but that was between the lines. Like I was basically, she saw me like this, but I was being like this. So I wasn't being the man she thought I was going to be. I was misrepresenting myself. And she didn't like the man she thought I was going to be, which is a vision of her grandfather she had. So this whole thing blew up and definitely ended the relationship. Had I, again, hindsight, if I'd known then what I know now, boy, the things would have been different.
Very.
Frankly, I probably never would have dated her, to be honest, because I would have chosen differently.
Yeah.
But I was invited into that relationship by her, and I didn't have the understanding of what being a masculine man was at that point. I didn't know there was such a thing at that point. So 2020 hindsight, absolutely, I know differently now and see how things are going to be different then. But I'm also grateful that happened to get me here. So lesson learned.
So important, because in her world, she felt betrayed and lied to.
Yeah.
Because she imagined this is all of who you are. And we both know from our personal experience and all this coaching we've done, everybody's multifaceted. Everybody is. I mean, you certainly can have strong senses about things. You can have strong personality traits, and still you're all these things. You're not just generally one thing.
Right.
And depending on the situation, you could be different, or how you're feeling that day, you could be different. And so that she just had you in this niche and really like that niche, and how dare you not just be this and only this. Yeah, that must have been hard on both of you a lot.
It definitely, I mean, I look back and it's like there was nobody was at fault ultimately.
No.
I mean,
because who knew to talk about it then? Neither one of you knew to talk about it. You didn't even know you could be a third thing, and she expected you to just be this one thing.
Right.
It's so the whole view thing that happens so often.
Yeah. Boy, life has changed. I mean, that's so many gifts that come out of that at the same time. This is one of the things that also I say, by the way, is when we can take the challenges from the relationship and make them into gifts for ourselves. That's when you really had victory, I'd say.
Yes. So I will talk about my big epiphany when we come back from the break. Oh, a cliffhanger.
See you in a minute.
Hello, we're back from those beautiful commercials. He does have very beautiful commercials.
They're very on
So with
point
her
every time. Yes,
beautiful hosts.
indeed. Shining today.
Yes, yes. With my helmet hair that I had to cover up because I went horseback riding this morning. So, talking about epiphanies. So,
Hmm.
I just tell people I was born nice. I was born a nice person. My mom said when kids would come over to play, they'd play with my toys. And I go, "You like that toy? You can take it home." And it's who I was born to be. And I like that part of me. And boy, in my growing up, there were lots of people who were very happy to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really sad. Oh, Gigi's putting in appearance. Hello, Miss Gigi.
Hi, Gigi.
So when I was married the first time, it was very hard on my niceness. And I didn't learn at that point how to stick up for myself or have boundaries or anything. But certainly during my dating time in between and running a company for a while, for 25 years, was a big epiphany. But what was really interesting was the thought process I found myself going through. It was one of those things where I'd think about it for a while and then it would like come to the front of my brain. I go, oh, I really probably should do something about that. Be like I'd percolate on it.
Hmm.
Because I thought if I was stronger, if I had boundaries, if I really told people what I liked and didn't like, that I would be a bitch. That I should just buy a t-shirt, get a hat that said bitch on wheels, because I'd seen that demonstrated in my life a lot.
Right.
And as you said, I didn't know there was a third option. I didn't know
Hmm.
there was an option along with being nice and giving and caring and being a big, bitchy, grouchy, get out of my way, that there was
Right.
a place in the middle where I didn't have to stop being nice. I just didn't let other people get away with shit with me. And I was like, well, how about that? Isn't that an interesting thing? And I really, luckily, I had a number of men who took advantage. And then I had a number of men who went, you know, you really should tell me to just back off. I go, really? I should do that? Who were good teachers for me,
Yeah.
really good teachers in this most kind, and I now am going to use that word. These were masculine men.
Hmm.
They weren't the too nice guys, they weren't the macho guys. They were the masculine ones, and I didn't understand that at the time. I think I just was so busy learning about me, but it was a gift. It was a gift to have men say, "Do this. I will like it. It will help you better in your life." And often they were men friends, not men that turned into boyfriends. And it kept helping me take those baby steps
Yeah.
to where now people don't get a chance to take advantage of me. And I have to tell you, nobody seems to be too upset about it, which is a nice thing to have, but it's okay if they do.
Hmm.
But I have really good boundaries now, and it really took me till my 40s. That's really
Yeah.
when I was thinking about it in my 30s, but I really solidified it in my 40s, where I could say, I'd rather it this way, or no, thank you, in my very pleasant way, which worked for me. Because
Hmm.
I only saw that you only did it in this horrible, beat him over the head, yell at people way. And it's made my life, and I really believe the people around me's lives better, that I pay attention to the barometer of, no, no, I'm not comfortable with that. No, no, you can't do that with me. It's okay that you go do that, just don't do that with me. Like I've told the story about how when I met my late husband and he talked about these amazing, um, now I've lost the word. What's the jokes that you play on people? Why can't I think of the word?
Pranks, I
Practical
mean,
jokes. He
practical
was into
jokes.
practical jokes, he and his son.
Yeah.
And I said, boy, I hear, don't ever do it to me. Don't, don't even think about it. Don't. And so he never did. And he told everybody, don't. I said, because it doesn't work for me. It'll hurt my feelings. Just trust me on this. So knowing that about me and saying that out loud was like, that's not going to happen to me. And I won't get mad at him for doing that. And it made me feel even more empowered. And it was part of those gifts that I got in my 40s from
Yeah.
these very masculine men. Who knew?
And I think I'll speak to that point because the things what you said about difference between you only have like two choices, like to be a pushover and be taken advantage of no matter what, or to be a real bitchy person that's snarky and everything else. There's a third option about just simply saying no and having a boundary. It's healthy.
Yeah.
I think for many people, that's the wiring that we've carried. I mean, same was true for me. Was like it's either the victim or the bully, but it was never. They didn't know there was anything in the middle.
No.
And to recognize there's a third option that is actually elevated and better than either one of the other two that's I think one of the most empowering things people could learn. If people learn that for themselves, just to take that idea with them, independent of this topic, even because even though it applies here, in every area of life, recognizes a third way to be. It isn't like totally for, totally against. There's actually a negotiable place in the middle. There's really self-reliant. That's a powerful place to learn from. So,
and it makes me, I'm going to say it out loud. People are really lucky to coach with us because we've learned this lesson in the trenches.
yes.
And it's so fun when I go, there's another option. Really, I've lived it. You can not be a bitchy person and you can stand up for yourself. I know. We get lots of credit for that, I think, because we lived through some hard things.
Absolutely. Well,
but
just another
learned.
one. Well, just another one, for example. I mean, I was talking to somebody about this recently after I was in the clubhouse room. She messaged me over Instagram about the fact that being single sucks. Like being alone hurts. It's not happy. And like she thinks it's either be in a relationship and be happy or be single and it sucks. And I've been single for 16 years. It doesn't suck. So the third option or another option is that you can actually find a way to have a healthy relationship with yourself that doesn't require somebody else to be there to make you feel better. And she's now learning that because I've given her some feedback and now she shared a couple of my own YouTube videos with her to watch to get some clues on how to be in self-support. So it's like in so many areas of our life, we do that. Again, back to this thing, we have extremes on two ends and recognize there's a place in the middle that's elevated above the two. It's like a triangle. And when you recognize there is another place to be, even if you don't know what it is, but willing to say, I don't want that one, I don't want that one. What's the third choice? Be willing to sit with what that question is and then let the answer show up. You might be surprised how easily you discover, I can see there's another way of doing this.
Because how helpless does that feel if it's only this and this and both of them are not great? Both of them are pretty yucky.
Lesser of evils, basically.
I mean, I get the people who say better to not be in a relationship than be unhappy. Okay. But you're still in a relationship with yourself, and can you still make that happy? Because if the only way you think you can be happy is including another person, that's not giving you a good foundation to come from to then be in a relationship with somebody. You have to really like yourself. You have to be okay being by yourself, because then you're not going to get somebody that wants you because you're desperate or lonely, because that's not good at all.
No. And the opportunities, I mean, it's interesting because I was posting something on Instagram yesterday, and somebody commented about people have no choice but to be single. Like they can't get in a relationship. And I decided, okay, do I want to engage in this person or do simply just like ignore it? I'm still deciding what I want to do, but the recognition of just people have this assumption that being single is bad.
I know.
And I'm like, if you can't be in a relationship, first of all, that's a lie. But secondly, is it okay to be single? Apparently not. You think that being single is wrong. It's like, that's another choice too. I know it's the other side of what we're talking about here, the relationship being over or not. But the false beliefs that people carry that are limiting them to a choice that they can't, where they don't believe they can have what they want. Not they can't have what they want. They don't believe they can have what they want. It is also distressing. And yes, they would be lucky enough to work with either one of us because we would encourage them and show them the truth is a much better picture than that.
Yeah. And for me, I agree. Being in partnership is wonderful, and I like it because my life is good, and then it gets even better. I just can't do it because I don't want to be alone.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Because if you're doing it to avoid something, to be away from something, may not be the best foundation to build on.
Yeah. Pretty shaky. So the one thing I'm going to make sure that we do address too is if you feel unsafe, if there's anything that you feel, I mean, we all think, everybody knows that. Maybe they don't, or they just need encouragement. If you're afraid to speak up, if you're afraid to have friends, if you're afraid to leave the house because of this relationship you're in, please leave. Please leave. There's lots and lots of help out there. There's hotlines you can call. There's shelters both men and women can go to. If you ever don't feel safe, you need to leave because it's never going to get better.
That's true.
If you don't feel safe, you are never going to feel safe, no matter what.
This is the thing. So many people have been through this because they didn't see it coming. Yeah. Because they entered the relationship and it was all perfect at the beginning. Everyone was loving, but like best possibility, and there's been nothing but grace and love and happiness and joy. But slowly but surely, those facades started to come down, and the true colors started to show up. And yes, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years into the relationship, the abuse, the wounding, the violation of your safety increases enough to be just intolerable. And yeah, it's not your requirement to put up with and suffer for it. Even if you have kids, it's important to take care of yourself. And if it means getting out of the relationship, because the relationship basically is already over, you just haven't left it yet.
Yep.
Because then it becomes a game of control, and you're an unwilling participant in it. Yeah. You say, yeah, but I still love them. It's like, do you really love them, or you just love who they used to be? Yeah. So yeah, definitely take care of yourself on that one.
And then there was another point that I had written down about sexual compatibility and incompatibility, that certainly our bodies change, our libidos change, our hormones change, and people can figure out how to make love all sorts of ways as their bodies age and they're aging together. I'm not talking about that. If somebody's really into, like you had mentioned, polyamorous, and you're not, all of a sudden they want to and you don't, or if they all of a sudden decide they want to start doing things that are more kinky than you're comfortable with. I mean, if you cannot negotiate this back to the person who doesn't want is really the person that's got the power now. You both have to agree if you're going to add something to your sexual any relationship, but certainly any area, but certainly sexually. Both people have to agree. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stay together, but you have to agree if you're going to stay together. Yeah. So if this person says, I cannot, I don't care how much you want this and it's going to make you happy, I cannot. If you're going to stay, you have to say it's okay not to. And if they keep pushing you, then that's the time to leave. Because if it goes against your core, your grain, whatever it is, you have to let them go.
This comes back to the thing I said earlier about the red flags and green flags, because we oftentimes are clear about what our red flags and green flags, red flags and green flags are, deal breakers and what we must have. Mm-hmm. But sometimes those are inaccurately placed. Mm-hmm. So we may have a red flag that we say, this is the thing we can't put up with. But then you realize that isn't quite so accurate. That's why I always recommend my clients don't have a list of 2,500 red flags. Yeah. It's pretty much impossible. But, there are certain ones you must be distinctly clear about, like maybe in monogamy, maybe it's drugs, maybe it's loyalty, maybe it's, whatever it is. Maybe one of your green red flags is, they work out all the time. But the thing is, make sure, and in fact, I was set up the other way, is the things that you make sure you want to have with that person, that they're healthy and they're loyal in the green flag column, those are great. But make the red flag column a little bit smaller. And yes, some things might make your red flag suddenly become a bigger list, because again, you may recognize things in the relationship you didn't expect before and go, oh, that doesn't work, I need to get out. But to choose the exit door too quickly, that's the thing. I want to make sure that you do intentionally choose for yourself, but also for the relationship.
Yeah. Because I know people who have said, well, okay, maybe let me try whatever. And it's like, okay, I can do this much. I can't do more, but I could do this much. Or the ones who say, no, can't at all.
Right.
But to have, if you love this person, you like this person, you've been in a relationship for a while, give both of you the benefit of the doubt. I have a conversation, and include a third person if you need to, because sometimes you're both just too close.
Definitely have the conversation before you quit. Unless, as you said earlier, it's not safe, then you're going to, it's a different story. But if it's just one of those things where you're trying to think with things out, so things aren't quite working out, it's like, are you willing to talk to your partner? That's a good place to start.
Yeah. You get hit, You leave. Please leave.
Yes. And speaking of
Feel like
leaving,
you're going to get hit. Leave.
yeah. And speaking of leaving, we have to leave the show.
Yes, it's time to say goodbye. And so
Yes.
if you would like to talk to Barry or I, the way that you get a hold of me is my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com, and fill out what's holding you back from love. And we can have a complimentary conversation, just privately, you and me, to see what is holding you back from love. You can also send me an email at christine@theperfectcatch.com. You can read my newsletter and see my YouTube videos on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest. What did I forget, Barry?
Instagram.
Instagram. Thank you. And please tell them
The
how to get a hold of you. Yeah, we like Instagram.
It's where I play more than I do with Facebook, it seems. So for me, all my social media and my website is Barry Selby, except for Instagram, which I'll get to in a minute. So you can go to my website, which is barryselby.com, and you can sign up. There's a little button at the top of the screen. You can tap on there to connect and schedule on my calendar a conversation with me, a free conversation. We can talk, see where you are, see where I am, see if we want to work together, what's lining up and everything else. My website has many other things on it. At the bottom of the front page, you can click on there to join my email list. So you get my notifications. And also, I say these replays out pretty much every week. And over my offerings are on the different pages. I have a YouTube channel, which is also my name, Barry Selby. So youtube.com/Barry Selby is where you can see, I think it's 1,400 videos out there now, which is like, yikes, that's a lot of videos. But if you want to get some free education, including this show, you'll find them there. And then on social media, it's Barry Selby on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Clubhouse, Pinterest, and then Instagram. It's the real Barry Selby because my account got hacked before, so now it's the real Barry Selby, where I do post a lot of provocative, inspirational, and challenging memes quite often.
Very often, and I like sharing them.
Thank you.
So we'll be back next week with another juicy, provocative subject at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern and all the times in between. And we hope that you will join us and share the video with your friends who might be interested.
And if you have any questions about this video, comment below. Let us know.
We'd love that.
Yeah.
We promise we'll answer you back.
We will indeed. See you next week.